Have you noticed that the same patterns keep showing up in nature? From the curves of a tiny snail shell, to the cloud bands of a cyclone, all the way to the giant arms of distant galaxies. Spirals are everywhere. Look at a snail shell, a fern unfurling, or a faraway galaxy. The spiral form appears again and again. And there's more. In a simple pine cone, you can see spirals winding to the right and others to the left. When you count them, you often get 8 on one side and 13 on the other. Ordinary numbers at first glance, yet they recur over and over. We also find these spirals in pineapples and Romanesco cauliflower. And the sunflower? It may well be the heavyweight champion of natural mathematics. Here again, when we count the spirals, we see pairs of very particular numbers. For example, 21 to the left and 34 to the right. It is as if nature has favorite numbers. And, mathematically speaking, that pattern is not random. These numbers come from a strikingly simple rule, popularized in the 13th century by a mathematician named Leonardo of Pisa, better known as Fibonacci. To illustrate it, he proposed a little thought experiment with rabbits. We start with a pair. Each pair produces a new pair after 2 months and continues reproducing thereafter. The question, how many rabbits will there be after a given number of months? Fibonacci noticed that for each generation, the total can be computed by adding the 2 previous generations. Without rabbits, it is even clearer. 1 plus 1 makes 2. 1 plus 2 makes 3. 2 plus 3 makes 5. 3 plus 5 makes 8. 5 plus 8 makes 13. And so on, indefinitely. This is the Fibonacci sequence. Even if Fibonacci did not discover it in the strict sense, his rabbit problem made it famous. And this sequence shows up everywhere in nature. In the arrangement of sunflower seeds, in the spirals of pineapples and pine cones, and in the petals of many flowers. A few often cited examples: the iris frequently has 3 petals, the hibiscus often has 5, and some species reach 34, 55, or even 89 petals. It is even suggested that, across the immense diversity of flowering plants, these numbers recur with remarkable frequency. The Fibonacci sequence is also mentioned in the animal kingdom. Sea stars with 5 arms, or the shells of certain tortoises with 13 large scutes. You sometimes hear that the frequency of a healthy heartbeat is said to follow ratios close to Fibonacci. Coincidence? Maybe not. If nature hides a matrix, we should be able to glimpse it. The mystery goes deeper. If you divide 2 consecutive numbers of the sequence, for example, 13 by 8 or 21 by 13, you approach an extraordinary number, 1.618. This number is called phi, the golden ratio. Why does it fascinate us so much? Because it is self-referential. Imagine a line cut into 2 parts, a short segment and a long segment. The ratio short-long is equal to the ratio long-whole. This nesting, this way of referring to itself, is what makes 5 so special. And our brains seem to love that kind of pattern. The golden ratio has inspired generations of architects and artists, but nature also seems to favor this proportion. It is said to show up in the construction plan of the human body. The ratio between the smaller finger bones and the longer ones is often described as being close to phi. For many of us, the distance from the head to the navel compared with that from the navel to the feet also yields a proportion near phi, a kind of mathematical harmony. And phi would not be limited to living things. Some even point to its presence in very distant phenomena, like black holes. For the physics fans, if in a Schwarzschild-Kottler black hole, you consider the distance between certain inversion points linked to light-like geodesics and compare it to a maximal centripetal acceleration, you arrive at a ratio close to phi. Beyond the technicalities, the idea is this: the proportion would concern not just our bodies, but the cosmos, from stars to galaxies. Where does this seemingly universal taste for a number sequence and a proportion come from? Let's return to the plant world, because if any domain showcases the power of phi, it is flowers, not for aesthetics, but for survival. When mapped onto a circle, the golden ratio corresponds to an angle of about 137.5 degrees. Its complement is 222.5 degrees. If you place elements successively, each offset by 137.5 degrees from the previous one, you avoid regular overlaps and fill space evenly. Visible consequence: 2 families of spirals appear, whose counts are neighboring Fibonacci numbers, 13 and 21, 21 and 34, and so on. If you cut a circle into 34 equal sections, the golden angle corresponds to 13 sections on one side and 21 on the other, 2 consecutive numbers of the sequence. This is no accident. It is the geometry of phi made manifest. Why is this useful to plants? You might think clean angles, 90 degrees or 180 degrees, would be ideal because the leaves would be very far apart, but at a fifth leaf, it overlaps the first and casts a shadow on it. This is a real problem for a plant that cannot rearrange its leaves once growth is underway. With the golden angle, if we simulate growth, one leaf, then another, no leaf ever completely covers the previous one. Each leaf gets the most out of the light. And this is not just a pretty model, we observe it in nature. Of course, plants do not measure angles. Their growth follows simple, local physical principles. Research is ongoing to clarify these complex relationships. But we can boil it down like this. At the tip of the stem, the meristem, new primordia form. The youngest cells are near the center. The older ones migrate outward, and each new cell positions itself where there is the largest available gap. Apply that local rule, and the golden angle emerges, naturally. Along with it, the spiral pattern our brains keep noticing appears as well. Let's recap the chain, from local to global. A minimal local rule, place new growth in the largest empty space. A particular geometry, the golden angle, about 137.5 degrees. An emergent global organization, visible spirals, Fibonacci pairs like 8 and 13, 21 and 34, and an adaptive payoff, optimal light capture, efficient resource distribution. This dynamic explains why similar patterns recur from a snail's shell to a galaxy's arms. So, coincidence? Not really. Behind the beauty of spirals lies a logic, simple local rules, subtle geometry, and the emergence of order across scales, from flowers to our bodies, from seeds to the stars. Fibonacci, Phi, the golden angle, 3 ways to name the same impulse, nature's tendency to organize space with elegance and efficiency.